Yes, can I help you?
Fast forward in time, and bam! Your boy Vane's vice captain of the White Dragons. Took big dreaming, a lot of hard work, and a hefty helping of best friend anxiety, but I got there. Now, don't get me wrong, rank, titles, all that stuff's just words, you know? What kid doesn't like getting a gold star? And this was a big, shiny gold star that said, "Congratulations, you're on your way to becoming a hero." Plus, now I got to be part of all the important security meetings. If Lancey needed help, I'd be the first to know. For once, I was feeling pretty confident in myself. Vice captains have it tough, but I was more than happy to do the work. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. After a few months, some nasty rumors began circulating through the barracks. People were saying I got my job through nepotism, just because I was friends with Lancey. It was kind of a dark time. I've been trying to come up with things that I accomplished when I realized there were none. At least, nothing that I'd accomplished on my own. This whole time, I'd just been riding on other people's coattails. The captain, as always, lent me a shoulder to cry on, and we agreed to meet up again in a few days. But when the time came, two, burlier figures were standing beside the captain, Siegfried and Percival. They were there to spar with me and judge, once and for all, if I deserved to be vice captain of the White Dragons. I definitely teared up a little. These were two of the people I looked up to most in the world. They could take whatever I threw at them. My hopes, my insecurities, the lessons I learned. I put everything I had into that battle. And in return, Siegfried and Percival gave me everything they had. Fighting the two of them was as intense as you'd expect. But once I got over my throbbing calves and aching deltoids, I felt really lucky. I had good people looking out for me. They showed me how far I'd come, and I could go the distance. I went back to the castle determined to hide everything from Lancey. He had enough on his plate. But you know how best friends are. Trying to keep secrets from them is like trying to hide an onion in a muffin. He cornered me. So, with nowhere left to run, I spilled the beans. Told him how the rumors had drained my confidence, and I didn't feel good enough to be his vice captain. Or his best bud. I felt horrible. I had the greatest friends in the skies telling me they believed in me. And still, I couldn't believe in myself. Lancey waited for me to get everything off my chest before speaking.
Vane, I recommended you for vice captain because I considered you the most qualified. The motion passed because the king and the White Dragons felt the same way.
And just like that, a weight was lifted. Seems like all I really needed was to know my best friend trusted me. And now that we re-established this trust, there was only one thing left to do. Beat each other silly. We snuck out to the training grounds in the middle of the night and sparred until our legs gave out. Then, we lay spread eagle on the ground, looking up at the stars. Those little twinkling dots were so inspiring. They're out there, a gabillion miles away. But still, their light manages to reach us. My dream of becoming a hero might be far off. But if the stars can make the trip, so can I. So this next adventure began on a day in Zega Grande like any other. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and I was soaking up some rays after a pleasant morning of grocery shopping. That's when I heard it.
Long live the Blue Sky Knights!
Yes, the fierce cry of a child in its natural habitat. Enough to strike fear into the heart of any warrior.
I've never seen you around here. Intruder alert! Intruder alert! Knights, assemble! Cannonball formation!
They came hurtling at me, faster than the wind. I stood no chance.
We're the Blue Sky Knights, servers of justice and roasters of villains. Who goes there?
But all jokes aside, these tykes were adorable. Reminded me of my own days playing Knights and Dragons. With both hands in the air, I thought long and hard about how to respond. I for sure didn't want to pull out my usual, "I'm Vane, Vice Captain of the White Dragons." I mean, capturing a real knight while playing make-believe could be an awkward sitch for the kids. But it also wouldn't be right to lie. Then, a candle lit up over my head. I'm Vane, the wayfaring chef.
Wait, you're a chef? That means you're an expert at brewing stews and baking pastries, correct?
I blinked. Hadn't expected such an energetic response. What? Oh yeah, and I've got the proof right here. I pulled out a bag of cookies, which may or may not have been meant for Vern and Lyria, but they'd understand, right? I'll bake them some more. Anyways, passed out the cookies, and in the space of a few bites, the tots were leaping around like it was their birthday. And yes, before you say anything, I do realize that bribing the future defenders of our sky with munchies might not have been the best for character building. But you should have seen their smiles.
You have some potential, Sir Chef. I'll let you cook for us as our square. I'm Skip, by the way, captain of the Blue Sky Knights.
We were on to headhunting already? These kids didn't mess around. I'm honored, Captain Skip. But to tell the truth, I'm kind of busy right now. Oh no. They were hitting me with the pout of despair and the eyes of the puppy dog. I bit my lip. This little game wouldn't take too long, right? Still, it has always been my dream to cook for the Blue Sky Knights. Squire Vane, at your service. just didn't have it in me to rain on their parade. After dubbing me in a formal ceremony, Captain Skip raised his tiny fist in the air.
We got our chef! Next we have to search for a base. Split up, soldiers! We meet back here in 1 hour!
The rest of the kids responded with a rousing cheer, and then they were off.
Hey, Sir Chef! That means you too!
I saluted. Couldn't disobey direct orders from a commanding officer. Anyways, I still had time to spare. I was gonna find these kids the coolest base ever. Yeah, I was born ready. Captain said there's some good spots around here. Just gotta make sure they're safe. Whoops! Looks like this place is already occupied. Like a hurricane! Done and dusted. Now, let's look for safer real estate. More monsters. This is definitely not a kid-friendly joint. That was a workout and a half. I think I might be in monster territory. Man, Nancy and I used to love exploring the woods. Woohoo! It's a party up in here! But it looks like I wasn't in. Oh my! Oh no, you don't! And now that that's over, back to the search. Very nice. Please don't let there be monsters. Please don't let there be monsters. Ah, pancakes, you scared me. Man, this place is on a migration rate. And the hunt continues. Shouldn't go for somewhere too icy. No monsters, perfect size and location. Wait, I think I see a path on the other side of that thicket. I bet it leads to Folka. Captain Skip! I think I found it! I led the kids to a sweet glade I discovered in the woods. It was right next to a big thoroughfare, so they wouldn't have to worry about monsters or getting lost. I mean, if I could find my way back, then anyone could. Still, the place was surrounded by some nifty bushes and trees that shaded it from prying eyes. All in all, I think I did pretty well. And, judging from all the frolicking going on, The Tykes agreed. Captain Skip pulled out a handmade flag that he'd apparently just been carrying around and stuck it in the ground.
This land is now the hideout of the Blue Sky Knights!
And sure, the thought, technically knights don't have hideouts, flashed into my mind, but you can't expect kids to know that. Actually, you know what? These Tykes might be onto something. Maybe I should ask Lancey for her own secret base later. Anyway, for the time being, I was in what had to be one of the top 10 hideouts in all the skies. I found a nice, plush patch of moss and plopped down. It was a good day.
Come to view the request?
Every time the crew touched down in Folka, I would make a beeline for the Blue Sky hideout. Half of it was me being a responsible adult and wanting to make sure the Tykes were okay. But there was also the call of duty. Wouldn't be much of a chef's square if I let the troops go hungry, would I? Don't worry, I didn't stuff the kids with just carbs. I also fed them knowledge. Things like what fruit to eat, what shrooms and plants were poisonous, how to tell if a flower had edible nectar, and where to hide from monsters. Lesson number 1, though, was how to locate drinkable water. The kids were living on the edge of a forest, after all. One day, this information could save their lives. For now, at least, it was all in good fun, and the Tykes were loving it. Whenever I gave them a demonstration, they'd rush to repeat it. 9 times out of 10, they'd fail, but instead of getting discouraged, they started a race to see who could get it right the fastest. And I'd always get this strange feeling that I'd traveled back in time. Back to when I was a squire, a Fiendrock, just beginning to discover the world.
Hey, Sir Chef, see that bug up there? You think you can catch it?
Gotcha. All right, gather around, knights. So, this little guy is super good at sensing monsters. Whenever danger approaches, he's the first to hide. There's actually a rhyme about it. Goes, bug on tree, monster free. Bug in ground, monsters around. Those kids were the most inquisitive students you could hope to meet. Soaked up knowledge like a sponge. If I had to choose just one lesson I wanted them to take away, though, it would be know when to ask for help. Because reaching out to others isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of trust. And without trust, you can't build an order of knights or any relationship. Growing up doesn't mean you have to solve all your problems alone. I hoped the kids wouldn't lose sight of that, as I once did. One sunny afternoon, I was heading to the woods with the Tykes when I saw a boy crouched in the shadow of the city walls. Who's he? An innocent question, but Captain Skip glowered and folded his arms.
Just some weirdo from Tempeel. He always looks like his balloon just popped. Once, I asked him if he wanted to be a knight, and he started crying. It's probably better to just leave him alone.
Skip ended this bit with a snort that said, "And that's that." But I couldn't help glancing back at the boy. There was something about him that seemed so lonely. Hey, Captain Skip, this is just my humble opinion, but isn't the duty of a knight to help people? Especially those who kinda sorta look like they might be in need. At this, Skip's face puckered up so hard, you'd have thought I squeezed lemon juice into his mouth. I got where the little dude was coming from, though. It wasn't always easy to do the right thing. That's what made it so rewarding.
You're not wrong, Sir Chef. Defending justice means defending the weak.
Skip dashed over to the city walls. After what looked like a pretty one-sided conversation, he came back with the boy in tow.
Say hello to the newest member of the Blue Sky Knights!
I couldn't keep from smiling. In that moment, Skip and the lonely boy were the mirror image of Lancey and me when we were kids.
I can no longer recall when I first met the captain. All I can say is our paths crossed in dark times, when nights were sleepless, and the wind whispered with insidious intent. Fiendrock, my homeland, was crumbling from within, consumed by the weakness of her own people. I ventured abroad to seek help from our neighbors, but this rendered me blind to schemes hatched in the heart of our court. When I returned, the adders sprung, and I found myself falsely convicted of regicide. Disgraced, I fled the kingdom and wandered for a while in the pathless wild. Perhaps I would still be there, slowly fading into the shadow, had the crew of the Grand Cipher not come for me. The captain never once doubted my innocence, led me back to Fiendrock, and cleared my name. My honor was restored. Thus concluded the greater part of my tale, but the Grand Cipher's myth was just beginning. I joined the crew to see this story unfurl. Our journey, like all great journeys, has passed through both sorrow and joy. We have traversed the wilds, crossed kingdoms forgotten, and met all sorts of folk. I've always found the meeting of people to be miraculous. Throughout the course of history and on into the future, there have been and will be at least as many people as stars in the sky. For any two souls to come together is as wondrous as looking up into the night and seeing your image set against the velvet and winking lights. I do not know if it was fate that brought me and the captain together, but I do know I will never meet such a person again. I intend to sail with the crew to whatever end, even to the bottom of the skies. In my youth, I was vain and headstrong. I shunned the company of others, hurting all who came near me. If I had continued on that path, it's likely I would have died alone, with no one to mourn my loss. But that was not to be. I was discovered by Yosef, the former king of Fiendrock, found, quite literally, by the side of the road. Though at that time, I slew monsters solely out of malice. His Majesty looked at my blade and saw what took life could also save it. He knighted me, and under his guidance, I learned about honor and friendship. I found meaning in existence. But in our world, love is inextricable from grief. New friends and brothers were lost. People that I trusted turned upon me. Loyalty had imbued me with pride. But now, it taught me desperation. Once, this desperation drove me to drink the blood of a dragon. This isn't to say that I regret becoming a knight. Lancelot, Vayne, Percival, the friendship of those three alone is worth any price. I learned the greatest lesson of all from them, that no matter how much is lost, we may always find hope in younger generations. They are what we must fight to defend. They are our purpose. And to think all this was set into motion by a single meeting on the side of the road. As I grow older, it becomes clearer how much I owe to King Yosef. But I shall never be able to thank him in person again. That is why I swore to repay him in the only way I know how. By dedicating what is left of my life to the future of his country. I know King Yosef would not want me to grieve overly much for him, but he turned me from a vagabond into the captain of the Black Dragon Knights. Under his rule, the base were ennobled, tall towers were raised, and withered fields burst forth into color. He might have done much more, had traitorous hands not cut his life short. The royal consul Isabella, covetous of his power, killed the king and smeared the guilt of it on me. Unable to prove my innocence, I was forced to flee the capital. For weeks, I was hunted by soldiers I had trained by my own hand, Lancelot foremost among them. My name was now reviled, scrubbed like a stain from the halls of honor. But this caused me little pain, for I never hungered after fame or titles. I served the crown because I loved my country, the same reason for which King Yosef wore it. Even as his body was broken and he lay on the threshold of death, he called only for the mending of Fiendrock. I would not let our home waste away under the shadow of Isabella's ambition. I returned to the Marches, where I dwelled in secret, gathering information. I worked alone, and even Lancelot was kept from my counsels. I did not tell him of my innocence, nor why I sought to cut out the now festering heart of our court. My silence was not due to a lack of trust. It would have been impossible for me to reach Lancelot unseen. Any attempt at communication would likely have ended with my arrest. But even had there been a clear path to Lancelot, I would have kept to myself. Lancelot was and is still young, and young minds are easily molded. If I was to leave the protection of the kingdom to him, I needed to be sure that he was more than just clay, that he had an uncorruptible, ironclad core. I needed to be sure he was not the type to blindly follow orders or emotions. He wavered, as we all do, but fortunately, he was not alone. He had the support of his childhood friend, Vayne, and of the Grand Cypher's captain. They were his light and anchor, and with their help, Lancelot navigated the swirling tides of intrigue and arrived at the shores of truth. We were thus reunited, and together delivered Fiendrock from Isabella's clutches. I had fulfilled King Yosef's last wish, and Lancelot had come into his own. It was time for me to step down and place the country in the hands of the young. And so it was that I put the rolling hills and bright walls of my home behind me and embarked on a journey of discovery across the skies. Zega Grande, another new skydom where the clouds hid unfamiliar tales. My travels aboard the Grand Cypher have taken me to many far-flung places, where I have found that there is yet enchantment in this world. I've sought after magical seashells with the power to heal kingdoms. I've crossed blades with legendary warriors, and I've heard strains of alien music, which, though strange to my ears, still spoke to my heart. But no matter how far I roam, my thoughts are constantly with the country King Yosef left in my keeping. When we alight in a foreign land, I find myself drawn not to gardens or taverns, but to places of law and order. I am ever seeking new allies for Fiendrock and rooting out her enemies. It must seem like I have a mind of cold iron and steel, driven by thoughts of politics and war. And I have no excuse except to say, once a knight, always a knight. Zega Grande had almost fallen under the sway of Avia. Now, as its people rebuilt, I desired to learn whether their fortresses were stronger, and whether any dark shadows still haunted their streets.
What you doing, Siegfried?
Vern appeared at my shoulder one day as I was walking through Seed Hollow. I'm gathering intelligence. The dragon wrinkled his snout.
Man, you're a workaholic.
He wasn't incorrect. I did want to lay aside responsibility and stroll unburdened in the sun, but I couldn't rest easily when duty called.
Hey, what if I help? 2 weeks are better than none.
Vern was indeed light and fast, but I found it easier to scout alone.
Ugh, come on. I know how to handle myself.
You certainly do. If anything, I felt that the captain, Lyria, and Vern were strong beyond their years. That they had been forced to grow up too fast. All right, Vern, be my guest.
Finally, something to do. Agent Vern is on the job.
Vern twirled deftly in the air.
So, what exactly is the job? What kind of intelligence you looking for?
It's a little abstract. I would like to learn about the values of this country. Why it was founded, for example, or what would cause its people to go to war. For nations with similar values are often quick allies, but nations with conflicting values find themselves enemies.
Yeah, I'm totally following.
Take Fiendrock, for example. Our king and people stand for fellowship and peace. If we were to find out that the leaders of Seed Hollow, on the other hand, favored conquest and power, then we might expect trouble.
What, kind of trouble are we talking here?
Don't worry. I gave Vern what I hoped was a reassuring smile. I am not here to conduct a coup. I only seek information to bring back to Fiendrock, which may help in matters of diplomacy.
Diplomacy? Well, that's way above my pay grade. Aw, dude, I think something just happened over by the gate. I see a bunch of soldiers running that way.
With two flaps of his wings, Vern lifted himself higher into the air and hovered, squinting against the glare of the sun. Seed Hollow's military force. This may be worth looking into. Come.
Right behind you.
A group of onlookers had gathered by the gate, speaking in loud, excited voices.
A monster hunt, huh?
Let us follow them. We may learn something useful. Nothing is so revealing of a person's nature as their deeds in battle. We passed out of the stone city and trudged for a while among grass and dirt paths. Or rather, I did, while Vern rode the winds beside me. Suddenly, he let himself rise on an updraft.
Spotted them! They're going at it!
As he spoke, I became aware of distant cries and the clash of arms. Let's see here. I crept beneath the shadow of dappling leaves and up a small knoll for a better look.
I don't think they can win this thing!
The warriors of Seed Hollow were many, and their faces grim with determination. And yet...
Captain, we can't hold out much longer!
Stand your ground. If these monsters get past us, it's the lives of your friends and family.
They were scattered, weak, and on the brink of disaster. Vern, I'm going to their aid. With that, I grasped the hilt of my sword and burst from the cover of the trees.
We gotta hold on!
They're moments away from annihilation. We must leap up. Come and face me.
The hell are you? Get out of here! This is no place for civilians!
With all due respect, you are not in a position to reject my aid. Focus on keeping yourself safe.
Alright, fine. That sword of yours better not just be for show.
How is he mowing down all these half-beasts?
Captain, turn the circles around the half-beasts.
Yeah, I can see that. Stop gawking and tend to the wounded.
We're gonna make it.
Heads up! Got monsters coming in from above!
The next wave is coming. Quickly, get to safety.
Bad news. Goblin soldier marching this way.
There's no way he can handle that alone. Who's still got juice in them? Back into the fray!
No, stay put. I'll not be able to win with you as a burden.
By my blade!
Great.
You cleared them out!
You are all safe now.
I can't believe my eyes. Is that guy really human?
We could have handled them alone. You know we could have. Think of how hard we've trained.
The cry of the last monster faded to nothingness, and I sheathed my sword.
Oh, man! They're lucky we got here in the nick of time!
Danger averted, Vern drifted to my side.
Well met, Skyfarers.
The soldiers from Seed Hollow gathered themselves and limped to form ranks. At their head, a man I believed was their captain stood, frowning at us.
You guys must be dying to thank us. I take payment in apples, by the way.
Vern wasn't quite reading the mood.
So you know your way around a sword. Great. We appreciate the help and all, but could you not interfere with official military business?
What?
We're professional soldiers. We can handle monsters without you swinging in to save the day.
Number one, that's a lie. Number two, what's with the attitude?
That's enough, Vern. The dragon looked ready to spout fire. Hoping to calm him, I caught him and held him in my arms. I'm sorry. We mean no disrespect. With a bow, I turned and left that shadowy glade. I did not relax my grip on Vern because I felt certain that if I let go, he would flip back and spit venom in the soldiers' faces.
Hello there.
What was wrong with them? They would have been toast without you.
Vern flew beside me, seething. We are strangers to this land. Those soldiers have a reputation to uphold.
Yeah, but doesn't it get you riled up when people are so rude?
I laughed. If rudeness were the worst foe we ever faced, we'd be lucky warriors indeed. In truth, I empathize with them. It is the duty of a soldier to fight. Incompetence on the battlefield is a matter of great shame. My unwanted assistance was salt in the wound.
I guess I could see that, but still.
Listen, no one was badly hurt. That is all that matters. I had trained many knights in my day. They had gone through their growing pains, and tasting defeat and humiliation. Yes, failure is bitter, but it is nourishment. And thus the knights learned and grew, each and every one of them, into powerful warriors. When it came to the finer points of warfare, the forces of Seed Hollow were clumsy at best. But their sense of duty was unparalleled. Upon hearing rumors of danger, they had acted swiftly, marching without fear to the monster's den. And though they had been forced to the very cusp of annihilation, not a soldier had wavered or fled. Now, they too had drunk deeply of the medicine of defeat. I believe it would course through them like fire and bring them newfound strength. The forces of Seed Hollow were capable of much, much more.
Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was a lone swordsman famed for his two-sword style. He became a legend after fighting over 10,000 battles, and the mere sound of his name struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. Whenever he appeared in town, ne'er-do-wells were said to scramble away like spiders fleeing the light. Prospective fighters began to seek out the swordsman, and thus he gained quite the following of disciples. Amongst them, some were so strong they could crush warships with a single strike. One could do worse when choosing students of the martial arts. So the master abandoned the battlefield for the mountains, where he could train his beloved disciples in peace. There was one disciple who quickly stood leagues above the rest. It took her only a matter of days to master the most complicated techniques. She grew at an astonishing rate into one of the most powerful fighters the Master had ever seen. But more impressive than her wits or her aptitude was the strength of her conviction. Every day, the top disciple begged for harder training, and the Master was willing to reward her passion with the very depths of his knowledge. And that's why? Oh, skies help me. That's why when the Master found out his top disciple had betrayed him, he was filled with anguish. She went rogue, forcing some of the other disciples to do her bidding. Eventually, the Master caught up with her, and they fought a deadly battle. When the dust settled, the top disciple's sword arm hung limp and unusable. It was a bittersweet victory, as the Master knew what must come next. He readied his blade, preparing to release her to the afterlife. But he couldn't force himself to make the cut. Not after all he had poured into this girl. Not after failing her so. Thus, he laid down his weapon and promised to live his remaining days in penance and regret. Oh, how our good intentions cloud even the most prescient vision. Having thrown away his name, his blade, and his path, he set out back into the world, but this time swearing no one would suffer from his tutelage again. Time passed, and the swordsman found himself atop a different mountain, where he learned he had a knack for fishing. Suited him just fine. Bass for breakfast, salmon for supper, and naps in between. Yep, it suited him just fine. It was the quiet, healing life of a hermit. Sometimes, when he needed supplies, he would go down to the village and train the locals in a little sword work. That made his coin purse jingle again. But this peace wasn't to last for the swordsman. He discovered his top disciple was back to her wicked ways, and, sword in hand, he vowed to conclude her story for good. This was his true purpose for traveling with the crew, though the young captain never suspected the little Harvan fisherman was harboring such a dark secret. The former disciple's latest victim had been a simple man from a remote mountain area, cut down, somehow without the use of her sword. A real shame that one more innocent life lost before its time. The swordsman asked the crew to make haste to the village. When he saw the murdered man's corpse, such was the carnage that he could barely keep from averting his eyes. It was his weakness, his cowardice, that cost this poor man's life. But this time, instead of wallowing in pity, he would don his white uniform of old and atone. He called it his burial garb, and it represented his fearlessness on the battlefield. If he were dressed to meet death face to face, what more could his foes do to intimidate him? Of course, his crewmates tried to reason with him, concerned he might throw his life away to make up for the wrongdoing of another. But the Swordmaster was determined. He had vowed to stop his former disciple, whatever risk that entailed. So, When finally the moment of reckoning had come, the master gripped his blade, ready to strike down his favored pupil. Before he could do the deed, however, his resolve crumbled. His emotions were too strong, dulling his senses and causing him to lose the match. The master's former youngest disciple, with his two newest pupils watching from the sidelines, rushed to aid him. Ironically, it was the youngest disciple who struck down the fiend in place of the master. The swordsman was lost in grief, but his newfound champion told him this was for the best. After all, such an old life deserved the rest of its days to be spent in peace. After joining up with the crew, I've had some helter-skelter days, let me tell you. So when we arrived in Zega Grande, I knew I needed to get myself some fishing done. Reset the old noggin. Found a nice, quiet pond and dropped my line. Bless me taters. Must have been hours past with no bite. Finally, I decided to pull up my rod and check if the bait was still hardy. But there weren't no baits, no hook, and no fish. Only a lonely little bobber remained on the line. Right, well, what about me traps? I was halfway through the search when I realized, blast, I left them in the lodge. What a day, what a day. But it was too late in the noon to go back for them, and I had other business to attend to, like getting back to the pond and staring out at the clear water. In that moment of stillness, the fishies swam out of their hiding spots. There were big ones and little ones, and the whole school of them reminded me of my teaching days. Each of my disciples was unique in their own right. Had me some slow learners and some fast ones, some goody two-shoes and some real punks. I learned me some good lessons from those kids. My top student, Grace, never wavered in her particular sense of justice, and her commitment to her training was ironclad. What a waste. Rains, my youngest pupil, lost his way for decades after leaving my tutelage, but he ended up killing Grace in my stead. He was selfless, thinking only of his master. They say the master extracts potential from the student, but I fear I've ruined more young lives than I've helped. Makes a fisherman wonder how they all would have turned out had he just kept well enough to himself. I turned Grace into a monster. Not a day goes by I don't regret honing her skills. Unfortunately, she had the gift and the gumption to go far, and I exhausted all my knowledge on her. If only I had focused more on the why of my teachings rather than the what. Huh? I swore I felt a nibble at my rod, but when I pulled it up, there was nothing to be found. That's when I remembered I still hadn't hooked or baited the line. That was odd. I was getting antsy. Maybe it was because I forgot the traps, but I couldn't relax just sitting there anymore. I decided to pack up and head back into town. You see, the mind is like a creek. You want to keep it healthy. You gotta keep the waters from stagnating. But churn them too much, and you risk losing all your fish. I decided to head to Sierra's shack and replace some fishing gear, hopefully restoring my brain pond in the process. But just as I was dipping my toes into the placid waters of the lures and bait, I heard a rustle from behind. And to my surprise, they were my crewmates, picking up a package. Said they were bored at the inn and asked if they could come fishing with me. Youngsters so bored they wanted to go fishing? First time for everything, huh? While I was hammering out the finer points of fly casting with the captain, Sierra Carte piped up. Said she'd come across a pretty tasty rumor.
Yep, apparently there's a legendary fisherman in the skydom that people have started calling the Fisher God.
I'd heard rumors like this one before, and they always stank like fish guts. Catching 10 fish with one cast, netting a whole consortium of crabs. By yourself? Gah! If I had a fin for every story like this, I'd be a pretty scary sea monster by now. Then again, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intrigued. There's a scale of truth to every story. So there must be a reason they call this person the Fisher God. Guess you might say my interest was piqued. Because if this fella were half as good as me, he'd make a mighty fine rival. And maybe that's just what I needed.
Come again.